Alright, welcome back ladies and gentlemen. In this video, we're going to go over part 2 of our penetrating shot rapid fire rogue build and go a bit more in depth as we go up to level 50. Just to give an overview of the topics I'll be talking about in this video, I'll go over the leveling first as far as how we get up to 50, or at least how I did. Then I'll talk about skill points, gear, and then finally malignant hearts. As usual, this build is tailored to how I like it, but of course, I'll give you options and tips on what you can do to make the build your own. Before we begin, I wanted to go over some changes that I've made to the build when climbing up to level 50. Essentially, in comparison to the preseason, I feel way squishier, so I've made some changes to the skill tree and to my gear to incorporate more defense. I've also decided to switch from poison imbuement to cold imbuement, mostly because I hate the devious malignant, but also as a defense option to help maintain the distance between myself and the mobs. This may change as our strength grows in the future, but I'll let you know once we get there. Lastly, I forgot to mention in my previous video that we are playing with combo points as our specialization skill, and if you're watching the video in the background currently, you can see that. And with that being said, let's get into leveling. Okay, so our main goal with leveling is to be strong enough to clear the capstone dungeon and move to world tier 3. I was able to clear it at level 45 with a few defensive aspects using this build. However, if you can clear it sooner or you clear it later, that's fine. Our main goal is to just get it cleared. If you want efficiency in your leveling and you want speed, then the common consensus right now is to do the Temple of Rot or to do other strongholds on repeat without actually clearing the stronghold so you can reset it and go back to it. I found that boring, so I went ahead and finished up my renown as well as doing some dungeons, doing some strongholds, just mixing it up to keep myself interested. However, I do suggest that if you haven't done your renown, then to go ahead and do that at least until level 3 so we can use the extra skill points, which I'll be talking about in the skill tree. So looking at our skill tree at level 50, if you notice, I have extra points up here, which I was just talking about that I got from my renown. So I'll be using those extra points in the skill tree. And once you get those extra points, then you can go ahead and fill out this build as well. So let's talk about what I've done. The first thing I did was max out rapid fire. The next thing I did was max out penetrating shot. We're going to come down to exploit and max that. Then we're going to max out malice. We're going to remove poison imbuement. As I was mentioning earlier, I switched from poison imbuement to cold imbuement. So we'll go ahead and get rid of this. And then we'll come down here to cold imbuement and we'll max that out. We'll take enhanced cold imbuement and then we'll take mixed cold imbuement. I went with mixed cold imbuement just so I can get the extra damage. We'll also take 3 points in frigid finesse, which is more extra damage. And then we'll also max out precision imbuement. We'll come down to innervation. We'll max that as well. This will give us more energy. We're going to come down to adrenaline rush. Take 1 point in that. And then we're going to max out haste. We're going to take precision. And then lastly, one of the changes that I made was that normally I would put these points into shadow imbuement, but instead I decided to put 3 points into sturdy. Just in case I do have mobs that get close, this will help me with some defense. So when playing the build, we're going to first start off most of our encounters by making sure that we have Dark Shroud going for the movement and defense. And the 5 little orbs you see swinging around me is the Dark Shroud. Then we're going to proc Shadow Imbuement first to clear trash with Penetrating Shot. Before we fire though, we're going to want to attack our mobs first with Puncture 3 times to make sure we have max combo points. Unless you have Condemnation and you pay attention to your combo point gauge, in which you can fill up your combo points in 1, 2, or obviously 3 hits. In between every shot, we're going to proc combo points again and reposition as needed. And after we fire our 2 shots of Penetrating Shot, you proc Frost Imbuement to clear the rest of the trash with Penetrating Shot, or you can use Rapid Fire to burst down the remaining elites. Rapid Fire is also going to be our go-to skill for bosses or just solo killing elites. Now, I feel like this build, in comparison to what I had previously, feels much better to play with in World Tier 3, but this is also pointless without the proper gear. But before we get to the gear, I'll give you a small demonstration. Now, some of the extra effects you see are going to be from my Malignant Hearts that I have equipped, in which I'll talk about those as well. And so unfortunately this Nightmare Dungeon doesn't have a lot of ads grouped together, so it doesn't look as good, but trust me, it works really good for big groups of ads. And since I'm here, I'll go over the Malignant Hearts that I have as well. So there are best in slot Malignant Hearts in which I'll give you those options as well, but the ones that I currently like, the first one is the Brutal Heart for using your defensive, subterfuge, or macabre skills, in which all suppressed damage is amplified by 250% and explodes whenever you use that skill, and you have a choice between 10% and 20% of your incoming damage being suppressed. So as I take hits, and I hit our subterfuge skill, which is going to be Dark Shroud, it makes that explosion. The other Malignant Heart that I have attached to Dark Shroud is going to be, let's see here, the Shadow Decoy Trap. Whenever I use Dark Shroud, I summon a decoy trap that explodes after time. And it works really well. This is one of my favorite skills. So I'll run into some ads, summon the decoy trap, they'll attack that, and then it explodes. So it's really good for holding attention. And then the last one that I had, is, which is another one of my favorites, is going to be the Stun Grenades off of Lucky Hit Chance, in which it procs way more often than you would think it would. Oh, this should be good. And of course, barely any ads here. But as you can see, after I fire Penetrating Shot, you can see the Stun Grenades drop, in which it's really good at keeping ads at bay, especially once you get higher in your basic attack speed and you can just fire off rapid fires and penetrating shots quickly. You'll see more and more of them. Alright, so that wasn't the best display, but at least you get the point. So, for my gear choices, I have made what I think is going to be my final gear selection, in which it may or may not change depending on how I see fit leveling up to 75 and to 100. You can roll your gear however you'd like. However, I do recommend two specific options, one of which being Penitent Greaves, especially for the chill, considering that we're using Frost Imbuement. And the next one being Condemnation, which plays really well into combo points, plus I really like the basic skill attack speed. More importantly than your rolls, if you ask me, is going to be your aspects. And so for our chest and helmet, we're using defensive aspects, one of which being the Skull Cap of Might. Or the Skull Cap is the name, of Might is the actual aspect. Basic skills grant 20% damage reduction. Then we're going to use Disobedience, in which Disobedience did get a nerf, but I still think it's fairly strong in terms of defense. One of our offensive aspects is going to be Corruption. Your imbuement skill effects have 40% multiplied increased potency against vulnerable enemies, in which everybody's going to be vulnerable with the way that we're playing. Umbros Leggings, critical strikes with marksman skills, have up to a 60% chance to grant free Dark Shroud. We removed Trick Shot from our crossbow, and we're putting Edge Masters there. Edge Master skills deal up to 40% increased damage based on your available primary resource, in which given Innervation and Consuming Shadows, I forgot the name of it, we're going to make sure that we have resource all the time. As I said, we move Trick Shot to our amulet. For our first ring, we're going to run Expectant. Attacking enemies with basic skill increases the damage of your next core skill, in which, because of combo points, we're going to be using our basic skill all the time. Accelerating, critical strikes with core skills increase your attack speed. And then lastly, we're going to take Rapid for the basic skill attack speed. So, as stated previously, I'll go ahead and give you some alternative options that you can use to customize the build to make it more suit your playstyle. If you'd like, if you're looking for health regen, you can take Siphoning Strikes. I personally haven't tested it since the new patch, but from what I've been told, it still works fairly well. If you're looking for extra movement speed, you can take Stutter Step. You can take Shadow Step or Dash. Specifically Shadow Step because it gives you Unstoppable. If you're looking for another unstoppable skill, you can take Concealment. You can also take Poison Trap as another skill, especially if you're running Poison Imbuement, because down at countering Poison Trap, it has a chance to give you the imbuement back. Also, Enhanced Poison Trap makes it so that it knocks down enemies, which is fantastic. If you decide to keep Poison Imbuement, you can take Deadly Venom for the increased damage, as well as Debilitating Toxins so that enemies deal less damage. The only things I don't really recommend as of right now are the ultimate skills, except for Death Trap. However, I don't think this build particularly suits Death Trap, but if you can make it work, then by all means. So, that's all the recommendations I have for this video. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comments. And in our next video, we're going to be doing the level 50 to level 75 guide, where I'll go more so into Paragon points and leveling as far as how to get your gear, Nightmare Dungeons, Hell Tides, and the rest of it. So, until then, later.